shut my Facebook down. It's so ridiculous. It's insane. They shut my Facebook down because I was playing John Coltrane. It's insane. And like I said, there are folks I know who literally will sit on their show, on their Facebook lives, and they will play music the whole time, literally for hours at a time, and never get shut down. Never get shut down. But for some reason, you know, they literally shut me down in 5 minutes. It's so exhausting. But I get it. It's because that's what they do to truth tellers. To truth tellers. So I'm certain that they got folks who like monitor my accounts, um, and flag my accounts and stuff because they're not so much concerned with whether or not I use clown emojis or whether or not I play John Coltrane. What they're really concerned about is the truth that I tell. Is the truth that I tell. So I got to go back live on Facebook again and see if I can regain the 300 and some odd people that I lost in my Facebook audience because Facebook shut down my live, allegedly overplaying John Coltrane. So ridiculous. So ridiculous. 413 337 1867 is the number if you want to chime in on the conversation we're getting ready to have. Tell a friend, tell somebody. Bishop is on the air again. Those of you who are jumping on Facebook, like, share. Those of you who are jumping on YouTube again, like, share, rep your city, rep your town, all that good stuff. We're going to give it another go. We're going to roll again. Matter of fact, let me go back to the beginning of this song. I don't know. Maybe they'll shut my program down for playing this song, but this is Ferris Hill. Don't stop. And we'll be right back. Reach a little higher, reach a little higher, dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper, go a little further, go a little further. Come on, come on, come on. Reach a little higher, come on, yeah. Dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper, go a little further, go a little further. Come on, but don't stop. The essence of life is growth. But the essence of growth is change. The being in the road will be the end of the road if you refuse to change. Your life will never change until you get disgusted with where you are. Whatever you don't hate is what you tolerate. You must learn from the past, plan for the future, and live for today. For it is your daily routine that determines your success or failure in life. It's the choices that you have made up until this point that will determine the rest of your life. So break the cycle that doing enough is simply good enough. You only get out what you put in, so don't settle for the crumbs so you can have a whole lot. So push yourself beyond your limitations. Come on. Reach a little higher, reach a little higher, dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper, go a little further. Don't stop, don't stop. Come on, reach a little higher, reach a little higher, dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper, go a little further, go a little further. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. So you gotta break the routine of trying to beat the system. Manipulators will always try to bypass the process for the quick progress. There are no shortcuts to success. There are no elevators to the top. You gotta take it one step at a time. You gotta break the routine of allowing others to get into your head and control who you are and where you're going. You see, when you're about the positive, you're gonna always have haters. But don't let your haters push you down, let your haters push you forward to the next level. So when people show you who they really are, don't perceive them to be something else that they're not. See, a zebra does not change his stripes. So you gotta keep pushing yourself to the next level. Yeah, there you go. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Go a little further. Go a little further. Don't stop. Come on. Don't stop. Come on. Yeah. Reach a little higher. Reach a little higher. Dig a little deeper. Dig a little deeper. Go a little further. Go a little further. Don't stop. Come on. Come on. Come on. You got to understand the greatness is the nature that you were born out of. You'll never discover your greatness without hard work and dedication. Greatness is more about who you are and what you expect for yourself. And greatness will always attract greatness. Show me your friends and I'll show you the future. You just a step away. You just a step away. You just a step away. Don't ever give up. Come on. You just a step away. You're almost there. Come on. You gotta push yourself beyond your limitations. You see, there's no mountain too high, no valley too low. You can go where you want to go. It's all in the power of your imagination. If you can see the invisible, you can do the impossible. So stretch yourself.
All right.
Take yourself to the next level.
So I hear some of you all telling me I need to post the fair use. That doesn't work for me. I hear what you're saying. You know, a lot of people get on and they post that little thing that says this. I don't own the rights to this music or whatever. That doesn't work for me. you know, like I said, for whatever reason, they're quick and fast and in a hurry to shut down. To shut down the broadcast. But we're going to move forward anyhow. We've got folk in the Twitter space. We got folk that are ready to have this conversation because this is an important conversation for us to be having on today. And so we're going to get it crunk. Tell a friend, tell somebody. Bishop is on the air right now. And we need to talk. We need to talk as a family. And people are real antsy right now over the upcoming midterm elections. And, I know there are a lot of folks who are real uptight about people like me that are sounding the alarm about the betrayal of the Black community. And I get it because you all are frightened about the potential of Trump coming back, Republicans taking over. Where is that going to leave us in the great scheme of things? So I get your reticence. I get your concern. I do. I get all of that. But at the same time, we've got to be honest about where we are with the party that Black people continue to give well over 90% of their votes to. We got to be honest. And I just and what I'm going to do, I'm going to share with you the president's own words. This isn't about Brother Swan's opinion. This isn't about, just what I think. I'm going to share with you what he says, because that's important for you to understand exactly what he himself has said. And you're going to see the way that I break this down. I promise you're going to see a marked difference between what he said 100 days after he took office, what he said in March, and then what he said by the time he had his first State of the Union. He addressed a joint session of Congress And there were certain things that he talked about in that joint session of Congress. And then by the time he got to his State of the Union, he did a 360 and completely flipped the script from what he said 100 days after the election. And I don't think many people were paying attention to the stark contrast between what he said in that first speech and then what he said after. And I mean, there is a stark contrast. There's a big difference. And this is the same guy, same man, but saying two different things, two completely, almost diametrically opposed viewpoints on the exact same subjects, um, between one speech and the second speech during the same term of office. Um, and we're going to get into that. And in my humble opinion, it really marks a real betrayal of black people. The way he flipped it, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Um, um, it was like within 10 months from that 100-day speech, and 10 months later, the State of the Union, man, when I tell you there was a difference, I promise you, ma'am, I promise you, sir, there was a difference. Obviously, something Facebook doesn't want me to talk about, which is why they took down my first live, and we're trying to get our audience to come back. Um, but the difference. So let's travel back in time. Let's go back to April of 2021. 100 days after uh, Biden took office and addressed a joint session of Congress. Um, what did he say then? Because you need to know what he said then and what he says now. In that first speech, an impassioned speech uh, that he had, that marked his first 100 days in office, he made a moral case for police reform. He invoked the words of Gianna Floyd, George Floyd's daughter, when she told him, "My daddy changed the world." What he said to the nation, okay? He said this, and I quote, "We've all seen the knee of injustice on the neck of Black Americans. Now is our opportunity to make some real progress." This is what Joe Biden said in April 2021. I want you to notice the language, because you're going to know a stark difference between that Joe Biden and the Joe Biden that gave the State of the Union address. Let me repeat that. We've all seen the knee of injustice on the neck of Black Americans. Now is our opportunity to make some real progress. Those were the words of your presidente in April of 2021. April of 2021. Those were his words. We've seen the need of injustice on the neck of Black Americans. I mean, that's a heck of a line, don't you think? And it was factual. It was factual. The metaphor was very apropos for the time, and it was a time to really strategize about how to make progress around police reform. Then he said we have to come together to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the people they serve. To root out, these are his words. This is a direct quote. To root out systemic racism in our criminal justice system. Watch this. And to enact police reform in George Floyd's name that passed the House already. This is what Joe Biden said in April of 2021. In that same speech, he pointed out that the intelligence community, CIA, FBI, saw white supremacy terrorism as the, quote, most lethal terrorist threat. Okay? He saw white supremacy terrorism as the most lethal terrorist threat facing the nation. These are the words of the president. He noted that the U.S. had an opening to promote real equality and opportunities in the lives of more Americans. This is what he said. Black, white, Latino, Asian American, Native Americans, so on and so on and so forth. Now, 300 days between that speech in April of 2021, 300 days, and his State of the Union address 10 months later, he did a full circle. I mean, well, not a full circle, 180. He turned around. I mean, he ended up facing the opposite. That's 180, right? You face the opposite direction. He ended up facing the opposite direction. After talking about the knee of injustice on the neck of Black Americans and how we needed police reform in the name of George Floyd, yada, 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 we come around to Joe Biden's State of the Union address. All of a sudden, instead of invoking the words of George Floyd's daughter, like he did in that first speech, he decided he was going to invoke the families of New York City police officers um, that had been slain in the line of duty. And this is what he said. He said this: we should all agree the answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. These are his words 10 months later. Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training so they can protect their community. And then he asked Democrats and Republicans to pass his budget to keep neighborhoods safe. Fund the police. 10 months after, we need police reform. We need to take the knee of injustice off the necks of Black Americans. He went from that to the hell with defund the police. Fund them. Now, what is that all about, ladies and gentlemen? How do you make such a stark change in 10 months? How do you make that stark change between your first speech and your State of the Union and now proposing a crime bill that proposes to spend $13 billion on putting 100,000 new police officers on our city streets? 100,000 new police officers on our city streets. Just think about that. What a difference. What a change. What and if that's not a betrayal, somebody please tell me what is. If that's not a betrayal to Black people who you promised voting rights, you promised police reform, and you went from that to, no, let's get them all the money that they want. I mean, he literally, after the Congress passed giving out monies for COVID relief, Biden said, you know what? To the cities and towns, take that COVID money, spend it on the police. Same Biden who said we need police reform. He's completely left. He has walked away from police reform. And he's right back to the 1994 law and order, tough on crime, let's get 100,000 cops on the streets, Joe Biden, that he always was. And I know this bothers y'all, because y'all don't want me talking like this, because we got an election coming and we don't want them Republicans in. But let me ask you, what's the difference between Trump claiming I'm your law and order president, and Biden not using those words, but his actions saying the same thing? I mean, come on. Come on now. Let's keep it a buck. His actions say the same thing. Let's get Marcel on. Marcel, you're in the Twitter space.
Hey, Brother Swan, how are you?
I'm good. You?
I'm doing well. I'm gonna be very brief. I just want to say, I don't know who doesn't like you speaking the truth, but the truth is the truth. You know, like the Bible says. I know you're a man of the Bible. You'll know a tree by the fruit it bears. So you may want an orange tree, but if it's a peach tree, you don't have to want the peaches, but it's a peach tree.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact of the matter is, like you said, what's the difference between Trump and Biden? The difference is that Biden actually has a history of passing legislation that has devastated the black community, from locking up more black people in bondage than since the days of slavery. When you even look at the COVID relief packages, I'm looking right here at some numbers. Biden gave HBCUs far less money than he gave the schools that mainly serve Hispanics. And when it came to COVID relief for farmers, black farmers got the least amount of money, even though we're the people that are owed the most. So it's our failure to hold these Democrats accountable because we think we're supposed to be loyal to a party. No, the party will be loyal to us. And without us, they wouldn't be in power. So we need to be loyal to policies that are for us, and we need to let this party that we've been given, as you said, 90 to 95% of our votes to, they are to be loyal to us. Without us, they wouldn't exist. I land there.
All right. Appreciate you, brother. Yeah. That's the problem. Is black people are far more loyal to Democrats than Democrats are to black people. Biden said to us, I will always have your back. Right now, it feels like he's got a knife in our back. His actions now feel like a callous attempt to appease the law and order crowd. The hell with black people. I'm in trouble with black people. I'm bleeding black votes. So I'm going to appeal to the law and order crowd, see if I can get them on my side. You know, and here is the reality. Policing has not fundamentally changed since George Floyd was murdered. There's been no fundamental change at all. At all. No fundamental change at all. Okay? There was a record number of fatal police shootings. I mean, police shooting us in 2021. And flooding a police system in dire need of reform. And I hate to use the term reform because I know really in my heart you can't reform this. You really have to abolish it and restructure and come up with something completely different, because the policing system as we know it started out as a force to catch slaves, catch enslaved folks. Slave catchers were the first police, and to keep black people in line with the white power structure. So the policing system, as it was created, is actually working the way it has always been designed to work. I use that term reform very loosely, but to flood a policing system that is in need of change with 100,000 new police without any accountability measures, to flood it with more cash before demanding change, only serve to buttress the brokenness that is already in place. You know, um, you don't fatten the pockets of a system that isn't working. Notice in his first speech, he's talking about George Floyd. In his State of the Union, there was no mention of George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. None. He didn't talk about that. You know, talk on that bill collapsed back in September. Even though he said he would continue to work with members of Congress who were serious about meaningful police reform. And that he would focus on drafting an executive order that included many of the proposed reforms that were in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. That executive order has yet to appear. Has yet to appear. Where is it? What happened was it was leaked earlier this year in January. It was leaked, and law enforcement groups, police unions, and all of those types of groups were so enraged by the tenor of the executive order's policy preamble, not even getting into the meat of it, because the preamble spoke about a system of racism, about systemic racism in the nation's policing, in the criminal justice system. They were so upset about it that Susan Rice, the White House domestic policy advisor, was forced to make conciliatory phone calls to law enforcement entities, basically to apologize about the language of the executive order. And we're still waiting for him to issue that executive order. Hadn't been issued yet. I'm telling you, he has betrayed the black community. All right? Let's get Barbara Lee up in the Twitter space. Barbara Lee, you got the microphone. Unmute your mic, sis. He has betrayed black folk. Barbara, you gotta unmute your mic. You're on the stage. All right, I'm gonna give Barbara another 3 or 4 seconds.
Okay, can you hear me?
All right, go ahead.
Greetings, members of the American family, families of the country. Like I said, I was just on my Twitter and I ran into you. And I just would like to leave this with members of the country. They put 1 million people in jail when the crime act bill was acted. And the only thing I could say, Pastor Bishop, is that the prayer band and honest hearts together with fresh minds can change this whole agenda. And I just want to leave you with that, my king brother.
All right, bless you. 413-337-1867 if you want to call in. Let me get Amia Hampton up in the Twitter space. Amia, you got the mic? Unmute. You have the floor. All right. Waiting on Amia.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Hey, thank you so much for taking this. Yes, I was listening, and I just want to be real quick because I know you guys probably a lot of people. Like Marcel said, we elected a segregationist. He has learned from the best. He learned from Strom Thurmond. And if you're not from South Carolina, Strom Thurmond had a white wife, a black mistress, hated the shit out of black people. So if that don't teach you how fucked up South Carolina is, I'm sorry for cussing. I don't know if you allow those things, but I'm gonna kind of calm down because it gets me really upset because it's like, we know the playbook by now. We know what they do. They throw the rock and hide their hand.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the red party are overt racist. We know that the blue party are covert racist. You can see we got stabbed in the back again. So what are we gonna do? What is our pivot? I say we get a for us by us a Negro Black American party
Mm-hmm.
and just run with it. We don't want to be around them. They sure hate us. You know how I know they hate us? We because they first hated on us. How dare you? It's so many layers to it, but how it concerted effort.
Mm.
The five tribes had freedmen slaves. And look, they get them reparations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about that funky ass HR 40 bill. I am talking about the AB 3121. That's a true reparations bill.
The HR 40 bill is not even about reparations. It's about the study of reparations, and we don't need to study that. Listen, if you
Study exactly.
if you owe me,
I'm just gonna leave with this because I don't want to. I'm kind of just so emotional right now because we were talking about this yesterday when
mm-hmm.
the hearing came up and how Miss Van was treated and how we can see how Maxine Waters will go hard for a Negro freedman but can't go as hard for an American freedman, for a Negro American. We want our CBC. We want the Congressional Black Caucus. We want the NAACP to go as hard as they do for these damn Hispanics. Go hard for us. Because we work hard for you.
That's real, sis. I appreciate you. Listen, sis is real. Sis is real right there because listen, they have gone hard for DACA and all kinds of, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, you know, immigration issues and all of that. We need y'all the Congressional Black Caucus, not the Congressional Immigrant Caucus. Okay, you know, you ought to be representing us. So that's real. We need y'all to show that same type of passion for us as you shown for other communities. Hey, you can't say anything about that. Let me get LaRon Barton up in here. LaRon, you got the floor. You're in the space. The mic is yours.
Hey Bishop, thank you for allowing me to speak. Listen, man, like I don't understand. Well, I do understand why black folks voted for him, but like I didn't vote for Biden because I knew his past. I knew his involvement with the '94 crime bill. I knew about all of his comments calling black neighborhoods. What did he call them? Racial jungles. This man's past actions would have told you what he was going to do, and that is nothing. I mean, the Democrats have been taking black voters for granted for so long, from Barack Obama's refusal to even say Black Lives Matter to his just inaction on anything black to now. You know, they campaign on sorry they campaign on giving HBCUs all this money, and I think it was like 40-70 billion, something like that. And they ended up only giving us, only giving the HBCUs 3 or 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, 3 or 5 billion.
Yeah, they dropped it from 40 down to 5.
Exactly. The Democrats believe that all these symbolic gestures from a quote unquote black, I don't know if you want to call it black, is she a person of color, something like that, from that vice president who says nothing about black issues to Justice Jackson to Juneteenth. These symbolic gestures, that is supposed to just simply that's just supposed to say, hey, black folks, we're giving you something, but that's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're tired of symbolism.
If you look around our community, right, there's no reason for an HR 40. You don't need to study reparations. If you pick up Michelle Alexander's book, the new Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
If you read anything, anything written by Malcolm X, that lets you know that reparations is needed.
It's a debt that is owed. I mean, and why do I listen? Listen, if I work for you and you promise me a certain amount for my work, like the 40 acres and the mule we were supposed to get, and you don't pay me, and I come back to you to get paid, it's not about. You don't have to then. Well, let's study.
Exactly.
Let's study whether or not I should pay you. No, you owe it.
Anybody that's graduated high school, anybody that has graduated college, you would have had to take some type of history course, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Any type of, so with you taking a history course, you would know that reparations is owed. Listen, I'm going to end with this. The Democrats know that Biden. There's no reason to vote for this man, right? If you really put it all up, if you really put it on the table, the fact that he's giving cops, I believe, and Bishop, correct me if I'm wrong, it's over $100 million to give to police, right? No type of real George Floyd bill.
No. It's not 100. It's not 100 million. He's talking about giving 13 billion for 100,000 new cops.
Wow, that is great. So Bishop, answer riddle me this, Batman. How do you? I've never heard of you fixing a problem by rewarding it with more money.
Right.
We know that police are killing black folks by the truckload. They are literally shooting us, and we are not unarmed. How do you reward bad behavior? So with that being said, right, with voting rights being just being attacked, just the total inaction of anything that has to do with black folks and racism, how would you vote for this man?
And see what happens is black folks are being duped by fear mongering tactics that basically say, you know what, I know Biden is screwing up right now, but we don't want to get Trump in there. And that's the only argument they have. See, my problem with Democrats right now is when your strongest argument is not based on what you're doing or propose to do for us. Your strongest argument is proposed on scaring us about what the other folks might do to us.
Exactly.
That's a problem.
You know what's funny, man? Like, and so when and I'm gonna end with this. Shout out to Marcel, by the way. When Biden was interviewed by Charlemagne the God, right? And when he said, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black." Now, two things about that. If Trump would have said that, y'all would have called him racist, right?
Oh boy, it would have been on, boy.
Exactly, but however, you had people like Clyburn coming out and saying, "Well, he's not perfect. We're not voting for Jesus." I'm like, come on, y'all. Like, when are we going to start looking at this critically and saying, "Listen, this is not okay."
Well, I'll give you another example to your point. You remember when Tim Scott, after the State of the Union that I've been talking about, Tim Scott responded. He gave the Republican response, and he said, "Let me be clear: America is not a racist country." Okay. After he said that, they went off. Black Democrats went off. They were all like, Uncle Tim, you're a sellout, so on. So, Uncle Tim was trending on all social media outlets because of that statement. Now, think about it. The next day, literally 24 hours later, Jim Clyburn, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris said the same thing that that Tim Scott said. They all said and agreed with him that America is not a racist country.
That's crazy,
The
right?
same black
That's crazy,
Democrats
right?
that went in on Tim Scott said nothing about what Biden, Kamala, and and Clyburn had to say, and Joe
You know
Biden
what's
had to
funny
say.
about that, Bishop? Is like we have so many of these blue checks, so many of these academics, as a man, Torrin Walker would call them, that they back folks up, man. So it's like if you were so, mind you, and I clearly remember when Vice President Harris said that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to charge at her, you would be the one thing that they would say to you is, "Oh my God, Bishop, you want Trump in there?
Right.
We can't win,
Right,
dog.
right. Yeah, well, first they would say, I'm attacking a black woman. That would be the first thing.
You cannot win that battle.
I'd be a misogynist, a sexist, all of that.
Miss War.
Yep, all of that, and then I'd be a Trump supporter. Even though, like, I challenged people, I said you can't find a black preacher in the nation that went harder against Trump the 4 years he was in office than me. And for me to now be accused of being a Trump supporter because I have the audacity to criticize the missteps of Biden is mind blowing, and it just shows the abusive relationship between the black community and the Democrats. It's like the woman who gets beat by her significant other in domestic violence situations, who wears sunglasses to hide the black eye, who lies and says she fell down the stairs, and that's how she broke her arm to protect her abuser. That's what black people are doing with Democrats. Bending over backwards to defend and protect those who are taking us for granted and abusing us every day. It's crazy. Appreciate you, brother. We get some more folks up in here. I know it's 10, but I know some of you have been waiting. Shark Trainer, you got the microphone. Unmute your mic. The floor is yours. Come on, Shark Trainer. In the meantime, while we're waiting on Shark Trainer, let me make note of this as well. In his State of the Union, I got you, Shark Trainer. In his State of the Union address, he never said the word black or African American. Never said it. Never said. What a difference 10 months makes. I mean, in the first speech, he talked about the knee of injustice being on the necks of African Americans. He never mentioned African Americans in his State of the Union address. Shark Trainer, you got the floor.
Morning, Bishop.
Good morning.
Great topic. You asked, Joe Biden betrayed black Americans. I don't believe that.
Okay.
Joe Biden was never going to do anything for African Americans.
Okay.
Think about it. This man has been in politics for nearly 50 years. Why would you promise anything to a dedicated, committed voting bloc that will vote for your party no matter what? He might be old, but he's not stupid. And I think black people fell for it.
So we've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok.
Intentionally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're literally intentionally ignorant.
Wow.
I honestly think so.
That's
he was
deep.
Never going to do anything for black people. You don't commit things to a voting bloc that is committed to you.
No matter what.
No matter what. You can call them the niggers, you can say the N-words, you can say the most inappropriate jokes.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. When you think about it, the response of Democrats to all of the voter suppression has not been to do what's necessary to pass voting rights reform. because they just gave up on that. Um, their,
Yeah,
their 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 strategy is to tell black people vote harder, outmaneuver, strategize and outmaneuver voter suppression efforts. I mean, it's crazy.
it is crazy.
That's really your answer. Vote harder. So we're not motivated to vote for you right now. You're bleeding black votes, but your push to us is not. We're going to go to the wall for you. The
Right.
heck with we're going to abolish the filibuster and we're going to get this stuff passed. No, we're not going to abolish. This Joe
They're not.
Biden. Joe
They're
Biden
not.
is saying no. I'm not interested in
Exactly.
abolishing the filibuster. Y'all just need to vote harder.
Exactly. When you focus on Hispanic immigrants, right then you vote your block. They don't give a rat's behind about African Americans or black people, as you put it. They
Wow.
don't. They
Wow.
never would. Our time has passed.
That's deep, brother. Appreciate you. Wow. Our time has passed. And there are a lot of people who agree with that sentiment. Our time passed with Biden quickly in 10 months. 100 days after he was talking about injustice on the neck of African Americans. 10 months later, he didn't even mention African Americans. He was talking about fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. Oh my goodness. Matter of fact, let me just play that. So y'all need to hear that. I know some of you have already heard it yourself. But that's what the guy who said, I am going to have y'all backs said. 100 days after, he was saying we need police reform. 10 months later, fund the police. Forget the hell with y'all defund the police stuff. Fund them. Here's Jim Crow Joe.
The answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them.
Fund them. Fund them. Ain't nobody thinking about y'all police reform stuff. Fund them. The word race was mentioned in his first speech. It magically disappeared from his rhetorical repertoire during the State of the Union address. Why is that? Because the political winds shifted in those 10 months. What polled well in the spring after the George Floyd murder wasn't polling so well the following spring. So he went, put his finger out, saw which way the political winds were blowing, and he said, oh, well, we off the police reform bandwagon, and now we got to fund the popo. Denise, you're in the Twitter space. Holler at me.
Hi, Bishop. Thank you so much for hosting this space, and I can appreciate the energy that you bring to these conversations always. I'll keep my comments brief, but what I will say is, what I am hearing offline is not the same as the energy you're bringing online.
Okay.
And what I am hearing is that unlike the energy you're bringing into this room, and Twitter activists are bringing into Twitter, many people on the ground are too heavenly focused to be earthly good to us and for themselves. We have married ourselves to this whole black and brown coalition thing. I was doing an interview, for example, in Chicago, and I talked about the idea that Black Americans, descendants of slaves, need to be focused on delineating and getting what is our due because of population changes and all that kind of stuff. And the lady who did the weather came on and made a slick statement about how we're black and brown, right? And if my advocating for black people somehow means that I hate brown people, whatever brown means,
right?
that's another example of that. We need to be more specific. We need to be more unapologetic. And frankly, Black Americans need to be more selfish. And I would like to see churches take a more unapologetic role in helping Black people realize that we don't have to suffer on this earth in order to get some heavenly reward later.
Wow. Sis, I often say this, because people criticize the church of only being concerned with the pie in the sky. And I say, y'all can go for the pie in the sky, but I want some steak by the lake while I'm here. you know, I want some tangibles to enjoy my life while I'm here on this earth. And
Amen.
and you're absolutely correct. There is no black brown coalition, because the reality is this: many so-called brown communities have taken a page out of the white supremacist playbook, and they are just as anti-black as some white folks are. We've got rampant anti-blackness in the Native American community, the Indian community, the Asian community, the Latino community. It runs rampant. Anti-blackness is a universal language. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly that black people need to be more selfish. And I've long ago stopped using that black and brown language, that black and Latino language, that black folk and Asian folk language, because at the end of the day, they're not advocating for us, and we need to advocate for ourselves.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right. Appreciate you, sis. That's real, y'all. Y'all say what you want. That's real. That's why y'all hear me say black people. Because at the end of the day, after we get done saying, black and brown, black and brown, black and brown, after we get done shaking the tree and all the apples fall to the ground, the brown people pick up the baskets and grab up the apples that we shook off before we can get down out the tree. That's the reality of what's going on, brothers and sisters. Super Mario, you got the microphone. You're in the space. Unmute your mic. You got the floor.
Hey, hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, brother, how you doing, man? I've been listening to you, man, for a little minute. I tried to jump on your space.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really proud, deep into the application for African American. But there's certain things, like right now, that I'm hearing that I'm like, kind of on the opposite side of.
Okay.
And I'm Puerto Rican. You know what I mean? I was born and raised in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes both ways. We can't just be pointing fingers at one, at the African American, because I grew up around nothing but black people my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in New York. It was my neighborhood was 80% African American, and then the other 20% was Hispanic. So I know what it is to grow up in the hood, in the ghetto. I've been through it, done it. But we can't just sit here because everything has gone into a different direction in society and just say it's only us, because it's not. The coalition will always be people of whatever color and gender, because that's what we are at today. We're not just at the African American status because we're going back to the pro-age. Yes, we are going back to those days with the Republican Party and doing what they're doing to hurt African Americans, because they're not just hurting just African Americans, they're hurting Hispanics, they're hurting kids of gender, they're hurting everybody.
Well, let me ask this question, and I don't disagree with that. But here's the thing: for black people to advocate for black people, it does not negate the struggle that other people may be going through. But my problem is when people act like black folks aren't supposed to advocate for themselves. Everybody else can advocate for themselves. You're Puerto Rican, and I know many. My city is predominantly Puerto Rican, and I don't blame them. The Puerto Ricans in my city, they say, "Listen, this is about Boricua. This is about us." And they have meetings among the Puerto Rican elected officials and activists every week and strategize about getting jobs for Puerto Ricans, getting resources for Puerto Ricans. I don't sit there and say, hey, y'all wrong because y'all not including black folk, because I believe they have a right to organize and strategize for their community. My problem is when people have a problem when black folk do the same thing.
But the thing is that this goes back hundreds of years. Your struggle is way worse than anybody's.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Listen. Listen. I am a true believer that African Americans have. You guys are the founders, the creators, the builders of this country. I mean, even of the world, I believe, because slaves were coming in from Africa. I mean, this is something that's been going on for centuries. We can go back to days of the Egyptian days when African Americans were building pyramids back in the Egypt days. So this has been going on for centuries. Your struggle has been worse than anybody's.
Thank you, brother.
But the platform also creates a situation that African Americans, and this is what I see in my personal opinion. I could be right, I could be wrong, but in my personal opinion, I believe that African Americans just stop giving up. You guys don't build, like when you got Bloods and Crips. I'm gonna give you an example. Bloods and Crips. Bloods will stick together. Crips stick together. They fight for what's theirs. If African Americans was to literally fight, like clap your hands, fuck that, grab your guns. Pardon my language. Grab your guns. Do what you gotta do and show them that you are not afraid. I promise you, this shit would all stop. I'm not saying this is what needs to happen, but there's certain the tactics that African Americans take is the short run. It's like, okay, we're gonna take the right and say, you know what, if it doesn't work, we're gonna have to figure out a different direction. Nah, man, you know what? Enough is enough. You either gotta fight for what you listen, for what you deserve, for what you earned, for what you created, for what you inspired other people. Because the truth of the matter is, and I know there's a lot of white people that might be here listening to all this, but the truth of the matter is, and in my personal opinion, I think white people are afraid of black people because they're more creative, they're more inspired, they're hungry, they got the desire to want to do more, and they can't have that. That's the fear they have. You
get no fundamental.
Too many African American achieve that they're gonna lose, and they can't have the loss of power.
Listen, brother, you get no fundamental argument out of me on those points. I agree. We do need to be more together, and we do need to be dedicated to do what Malcolm said. By all means necessary. Appreciate your input. Bro. Let me get information. What is your name? Information Man Show. All right, you got the microphone. Unmute your mic. You got the floor. Information Man.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you,
brother.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. It might sound a little distorted because I'm driving in the car right now.
Okay.
I just gotta say this. I know what the cat is saying, but people equate black people to. Well, you know, I understand people could. You know, I grew up in the ghetto. It's people live at. There's all kind of black people of all different backgrounds. Don't equate us to the most negative. See, I understand y'all, and I'm people trying to tell us what it is. Okay? Stop it. We know what our struggle is. We know what we need to do. We don't need other groups telling us anything. They always want to step in for our space and tell us what we need to do and how we're doing this not the right way. No. We're doing exactly what we're supposed to do. And I live in California. Live here, and I see how other ethnic groups, how they get certain sides and how they treat black people, and how they treat us and talk to us. They respect, especially here in California, where black people are being pushed out of San Francisco. You see what's happening down there. Okay, these politicians don't give a damn about us, and we got to get to them. So I 100%. As it relates to reparations, I'm I'm down with Brother Chris, CJ. I'm doing a program this weekend on my regulations as it relates to California, and we're just going to keep pushing forward. And who come in from other groups, other ethnic groups, trying to tell us what we should do. And all bullshit. That's just distraction, bro. Complete distraction. We need to focus on ourselves and forget. They damn sure don't think about it get theirs. Thank you.
All right, brother. All right. I feel your passion. I feel your passion. Um, let me go back to since we're in this vein. Uh, there's something that happens when you mention black. That gets people on edge. When I keep referring to Biden's State of the Union, the stark difference between it and his 100-day speech, he never mentioned black. He never said African American. It was like he was scared to say black. Is that a coincidence? Think about it. Think about the fact that he told black people when he got elected that you saved my campaign, you saved my election, I owe you. I will have your back. He went from that to not mentioning black people in the State of the Union. Even when he talked about historically black colleges, he used the acronym HBCU. He never said black. Even when he mentioned Ketanji Brown Jackson, he didn't point publicly to the historical significance of her being the first black woman nominated. Is that an oversight that he wasn't mentioning the word black? I don't think it was. I don't think it was. You know, I think he was very deliberate, and his speechwriters were very deliberate in checking the polls and deciding I can't really be talking about supporting black people. I can't be talking about no police reform. I can't be talking about African Americans and all that stuff. I need to change my rhetoric. I need to change my rhetoric. I can't be talking about the relentless attack on black voting rights. I can't be talking about reversing the panic over so-called critical race theory, because he didn't talk about any of that. None of that. I can't talk about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I mean, there was just a marked difference in his language. To me, it marked a complete betrayal of black people. When the John Lewis Voting Rights failed in the Senate, Biden said this. He said his administration would never stop fighting to ensure that the heart and soul of our democracy, the right to vote, is protected at all costs. He promised that they would continue to work with allies to advance legislation to protect the right to vote and push the Senate for a procedural change that would protect the fundamental right to vote. Now, as far as I can tell, they didn't push for any procedural change. You know, whatever happened to that never stop fighting? You know, I mean, where did he learn how to fight? In a pillow factory? Because he ain't fighting for our right to vote. I mean, come on, man. Let's be serious. Let's get Dirty Rise up in here. Dirty, you got the floor.
Good morning, everyone. And I just want to say I've been listening, and I like what you guys are talking about. But I think that when we talk about being on code, the first thing we have to do is our community. Of course, one part of that code is to keep others out of our business. Second part of the code, I think, is that we have to rebuild the black family in this country. We know what we're up against. We know what they did to tear down the black family, from destroying our leaders and also leaving our first ladies, Coretta Scott King, and leaving, them without husbands. So if you know that you have an enemy that does not want that head of the family, what you need to do on code is to start committing, teaching these young people to start committing, because you cannot raise a nation who understands voting, politics, legislation. You cannot raise them into that family is put back together. Secondly, I think that we also need to realize on code that we can be our biggest enemy. So we need to, instead of always talking about with the gangs and this and that, if you got gang members in your family, reach out to them, put them on code, get them a knowledge of self. What getting together and using your professional self. A lot of times when we make it, I'm an educated brother, a couple of degrees. We don't want to go back because we think our family members going to beg us for this because we're doing better, this, so on and so forth. Well, it takes a village, to raise these children. So we have to interact with our family in order to build them up and to be able to help others. And I'm not saying give somebody fish. A lot of times in my family, I teach how to fish. I dedicate myself, because I'm in tech, I dedicate myself to helping our young kids because we need more of us in tech. Without us being in vital spaces like technology, artificial intelligence, different things of that nature, we're not going to be considered a powerful group of people until we're in the same spaces competing. They tried to box me out in this. I've been in this since '93. There was people from the dominant society that were young that came in with no college degrees and got better pay than me. But I refused to let them not. I'm down here in Houston, Texas. I refused not to be in my field, and I kept going. I'm working on my master's now. But what I'm saying, every time we do something or push for something, they move the goalposts. So if we get on code and work with each other, work to help each other, work to help each other in college, encourage those who are going to school to get certificates, put that black family back together. Start teaching these young people to commit. Stop listening to this music that's telling women to have a hot girl summer and end up pregnant and or disease, and our young men the same thing. Then we'll be getting somewhere and we'll be more unified as a people. I'm landing on that.
All right. Appreciate you, brother. No hot girl summers, y'all. Y'all need to stop that foolishness. No, I feel you, brother. There are things that we need to do as a family to forward the progress of our community, and that's real. That's definitely real. I'm going to be winding down in the next several minutes. Let me see. Oh man, there's a bunch of y'all still trying to get in the queue. So let me see and bring up a few more of y'all. 313 Sunny. 313. You're in the 413. You got the microphone.
What's going on, big brother? Bishop Swan, how you doing this morning? Grand rising to the family.
All right, same to you, brother.
Yes, sir. First and foremost, let me give you your accolades. You've been going hard for black people for years, so I definitely appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, man.
Oh, yes, sir. So, want to start off piggybacking on something you said, an analogy you made. You said that we're basically in an abusive relationship with the Democrats. What's the one thing that an abused person always says? Oh, it'll get better. But we've been having that mindset for how long? And it's not getting any better. Like you said, I mean, it's been promises and promises, and they always renege on them. But I go off of what the VP told us. I'm not going to do anything specifically just for black people. No.
Right.
They told us what the agenda was.
She said it.
But we still have people who's just delusional and who's basically robots and just going to keep on doing the same thing and expecting different results. As despicable as they are, the one thing I can say about the Republicans, they don't shit on their base. And when their base makes noise and let them know what they want done, they get it done. I'm down here in Florida now, and a lot of this crap that Ron DeSantis is doing, I don't agree with it, but that's what his base
He's
wants.
appeasing his base, that's for sure.
He's doing what they want,
Yes, sir.
and it is time to put the pressure on these Democrats. And I'm at odds with my parents about it all the time because they are, well, it's better than Trump. Like, yeah, is it? You know, because and I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't like any politician really. So,
and here's the reality. Here's the reality. Being critical of Biden does not mean you're a Trump supporter. People have to let that asinine narrative go.
absolutely. And I remember earlier you said how you been one of the most vocal against Trump. I came to find you after the interview you did with Jesse Lee Peterson when you gave him that work.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've definitely been speaking out against Trump for the longest. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like we get demonized when we criticize the Democratic Party, and they like kind of scoff at us, like, "How dare you demand something for your vote?" Well, a vote is a form of currency,
especially black men. Especially black men. You know, they have the nerve to tell us that we're being puppets of white supremacists like Steve Bannon. Like we're unintelligent and we can't think for ourselves. Like we're criticizing Biden because Steve Bannon told us to. It's and black women are parroting this crazy narrative.
Like Joy Reid.
Yeah.
Calling people on Twitter who's talking about reparations and tangibles, calling us Russian bots. No, we're real people. We want to get something for our vote, like all these other groups do. And shout out to the brother or sister who brought up HR 40 because it is a big nothing burger.
Yeah.
Why do you have to study something
that
we have over 400 years of history and data on?
Yeah.
Cut the check.
Yeah, cut the check.
You didn't have to study.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right. They didn't study it before they gave it to Japanese who were interred during World War II, and they gave that in the 1980s. For those of you who talk about, well, none of you were slaves. Well, none of those Japanese that they gave money to in 1980s was around in the 40s when they were interred either. But you didn't have a problem with that.
Facts. We sending money. We sending billions or trillions over to Israel every year. We didn't have anything to do with the Holocaust. We send money over there to Ukraine. We not over there bombing the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And they're not even citizens. So you mean to tell me y'all can dish out all this money for people who's not even citizens, but when it comes to us and our demands, we're wrong for asking for that? Like, I'm to the point where I don't see any good options. It's like I do want to exercise my votes, my right to vote, but at the same time, I want to see something. I want to see some effort from whoever I'm putting out there. And shout out to the brother Marcel. He definitely ran a good campaign. I love everything that he stand for. And if it was more people like him running, then I'd be the first person at the polls. And if it was more people like you, I would still be in the church. I'm gonna lay in there.
All right.
Y'all have a good day, man. Y'all be blessed.
Appreciate you, bro. Della Blake, in the Facebook space. My answer to your question: I don't trust Andrew Yang. Do a search and find some crazy stuff that Andrew Yang, some anti-black stuff that Andrew Yang was saying. So I once upon a time I was in a coalition around stimulus payments during the pandemic with Andrew Yang, working with Andrew Yang, and from my experience with that and some subsequent things that Yang did when he was trying to run for mayor and stuff, I got a bad taste in my mouth with Andrew Yang. So any type of party he's trying to put together, I don't think it's going to be good for black people. So I wouldn't have anything to do with it. So that's my answer on that question. All right, I got to round the bend, y'all. I got to round the bend. I got to round the bend. Let me see. Some of you all have already spoken. Try to get those who haven't. Black and Power, you're in the Twitter space. You got the microphone. Unmute your mic.
Hey, peace and blessings to the room. Peace, blessings to you, Bishop. Good morning to the room. Listen, I got to go back. I want to assume that he was Hispanic. I don't like to assume that he sounded like that he was, right? And he came in the room basically telling us what we should do. And his comments were, you can see how entitled his comments were. He was telling us that it can't be all about us. And the question I always have when they say that is,
why not?
What has any of those?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying, what has those other groups ever done for us when something is given to them? When the Asians got policies for themselves, and when they got money, I didn't see when Asians standing up and saying, "Hey, what about the Black Americans?
Right.
They're oppressed and they need something too." When the DACA program came out, which would help some of his people, I didn't see anybody say, "Hey, what about the Black Americans? They need something too." I mean, they always want to get on board with us and then have an opinion on telling us what we should be doing when they got a home country and they can go fix their problems there. Just like what you said. Anytime anyone mentions the word black,
yes, sir,
it triggers.
Yes, sir.
Talk about doing something for black people, they get triggered. Our relationship with them is never been any reciprocity, right? And it's been an abusive relationship. Point blank, they should just mind their own businesses, and we're going to do what we need to do. And I land that.
All right. Yes, sir. They get triggered when we mention black people. Anytime we talk about doing something for ourselves. Untouchable. You're in the space. We round in the bend. We round in the bend. Unmute your mic. You got the floor.
Yes, sir, Bishop. Thank you for letting me speak. Peace and blessings to the room. Fellow New Englander here. I just wanted to say to the Hispanic brother that called in, there is no coalition, and Hispanic people a lot of times in other groups, these quote-unquote brown people, have it convenient where they can latch on to things that we're doing. One of my fraternity brothers passed legislation to have African American studies taught from middle school to high school, and they wouldn't pass it unless he latched on Hispanic studies. So he initially fought against that, and then finally conceded just to get it in.
Wow.
And yeah, in the Hispanic caucus, because he's a legislator, one of them said, "Y'all had your time. It's our time now."
Wow.
So being as Hispanics, when they're quote unquote one step above us because black people have been treated negatively as the lowest ring on the ladder economically and socially in this country.
Wow.
That they can conveniently walk with us, and then when it's convenient, walk away from it.
Now let me ask you this question. Question. What fraternity are you?
Omega Psi Phi. Shout out to you, my old Phi Theta brother.
All right, Frater. Yes, sir.
Fellow Greek. Yes, sir. Yes, so it's convenient that they can walk with us and then not walk. And I'll land there. But we're not all the same, and we're not all aligned. And when it's convenient, they can disassociate themselves from us, brother. Thank you for the time on the space. Peace.
All right. Appreciate you, man. All right, let me get maybe one more or so up here before I got to go. Sammy Raw, you've been waiting for a minute. I need to get Elmira up too. Sammy, you got the microphone. Unmute your mic. You got the floor. Come on, Sammy.
Okay, I'm on now. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm over in Australia. Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right. Yeah, great topic. Yeah, it's interesting because the last couple of years I've been trying to understand us the people. Now, for one, I knew there was no way in hell I was voting for Biden because I checked his past and I saw the things he did wrong to our people, especially their crime bill. And I was wondering why the heck are black people choosing to vote for this guy and for this party?
Because they wanted to get rid of Trump.
That's what my dad said. You know, my dad's he's a military guy, so it's okay. I respect that, but I'm thinking like that still doesn't make any sense because Trump didn't create any policy that hurt us, but Biden did. So I started digging deeper into us, and one thing I know is a few things. I think we have an identity issue, and I'm thinking, why is that? Okay. Then I started studying like our origin, where we came from, and one thing I found is that I know it will sound crazy, but we actually ruled Europe, Scotland, the British Isles, southern Italy. Then we were shipped over to West Africa, and from there we came to America. So I think one of our biggest issues is our identity. We don't really know our origins, and we don't know where you come from. You're willing to just fall for anything, and we should know better. I mean, we've been around pimps. We know the talk. And Biden, since day one, for me, in my opinion, he's been just pimping us. And also, not only that, on top of that, as we know, when it comes to 13th, the 14th Amendment, that was designed for Black people, but it's been used by other groups.
Yeah.
So we pretty much, we're the most colorblind race in America. We love everybody, but people don't love us.
Yeah.
You know, we got to change our mentality. And, you know, on top of that, a lot of our last names, those are our real last names. Those are our real last names. Those are slave names. You look back and study, you go back and study the over in Scotland and over in the Highland Clarence, things like that. Those are real names. Those are Hebrew names. So once we figure out, get back to understand who we really are, we're not going to accept all this BS from people. All this colorblind, love everybody, nobody loves us.
Right.
You know, we're not going to get nowhere. We're not going to like a dog chasing his tail. So I think we should. And also another thing, the Democrats, all of his members talking about sex and kids. That's all I hear. Sex and kids. What is that?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, they're definitely not promulgating an agenda or an issue-oriented campaign that caters to the concerns of Black people. I appreciate you, brother. I got to run. I need to get one more person up in the space who's been waiting. Let me see if she's still here. Elmira, you got the microphone.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning.
Just needed to comment that when Biden did get elected, I pretty much figured it would go the way the Jesuits chose it to go. He is totally with Catholic religion, financial, religion, and military. Those are the three forms of power that these people only deal with. We have always been subjected to the slavery situations globally, and this is where they place us. Until we separate and acknowledge that we have the power within ourselves to carry on and build our own nations, we will continue to be the dog of the globe.
Wow.
Starting in America.
Wow. Appreciate you, sis. And we're going to end on that. Sorry, those of you all who are still in the space trying to get up. I got to go. Got to move out your way. Now, I'll be back on Monday, okay? On the spoken word, Monday at 9 o'clock a.m. So catch me. I'll be back in the space on Monday. And from here on out, at least for the time being, I'll be rolling on the Black Love Experience on Friday mornings at 9 o'clock. All right. So if you're not following me, follow me on all social media at Talbert Swan. If you're looking for a place to worship and you're in the 413, check us out at the Spring of Hope, Church of God in Christ. 35 Alden Street, Springfield, Massachusetts, 11 o'clock a.m. on Sundays, in person and live streaming, and our virtual midweek Bible study on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Always a pleasure being with you, family. Until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember, God loves you. So do I. Peace.